Hi, everyone. So, this reading is intended to be for anyone who's feeling overwhelmed by something right now, burdened by perhaps your own responsibilities, or perhaps you've taken on responsibilities that don't belong to you. So, I'd like to do a reading about that just to see if there are any burdens you can release, more responsibilities you can delegate, perhaps lessons that you can learn. But this is really for you if you're feeling like you're just completely overwhelmed by something right now. So let's see what the tarot says. And then I have two oracle decks. So we're starting with the Hermit, Six of Cups, Knight of Wands, Eight of Swords, Nine of Swords, Three of Wands. So then in each of these positions, I'm going to put a prism oracle card and then the archetype card. So we have protection, confidence, surrender, hunger, faith, and ghost. And then finally, we will do one archetypal card for each of these positions, and then we're going to get into this and maybe try to get you some advice when it comes to your overwhelm. So we have the One, the Riddle, the Underworld, the Mask, the Judge, and Anima Mundi. So in general, because we started with the Hermit, protection, and the One, it feels like you perhaps are the person who is taking care of everybody. So I do get this sense with the Hermit that you feel like you're a bit on your own, or that maybe people lean on you and you alone and not anyone else, because we are getting protection and we are getting the One. So I get the sense that you truly have a lot of love for people. You want to protect people. And so because of that, because you love so fiercely and so unconditionally, that you tend to take on a lot of the responsibilities of other people, even when you don't have to. But I do feel like with the One and with the Hermit, that you have a lot of inner wisdom that people gravitate to, that people just really want to be around you and around your energy. You're very grounded, you're very wise. I'm seeing a lot of black colors come through here, which is telling me that you're very grounded. And so I do think that people just naturally gravitate to you when they have problems or when they need something, because of just the energy that you put out. And plus, it looks to me like you don't really deny too many people of what they need, because you love so passionately, you love so fiercely, that it does feel like you want to be able to do this. You want to be able to help other people. So, but then I see with the Six of Cups, confidence, and the Riddle, that it feels to me that you may have taken on a lot of these things, a lot of these burdens perhaps, or responsibilities of others, this overwhelm that you are experiencing. You could have just taken these things on out of kindness, because we have the Six of Cups here. So this could be people from your past that you give to. These could be family members. These could be your parents or your siblings, or maybe if you have adult children, because I'm not talking about young children, because those are our responsibilities to take care of. But if you have grown children that perhaps you're still caring for in ways that they could be caring for themselves, I do feel like you just kind of go with the flow, that you kind of just flow in this rhythm of you are the person who gives to everybody. But I feel like you kind of got lost in that rhythm. I think that with this Riddle card here, that like you've had an aha moment recently where you've said to yourself that perhaps I don't have to be the one to be giving to everyone. And I don't get a sense here that anyone is giving to you. So it's like eventually physics must apply. If everyone is leaning on you and you have no one to lean on, then what? So, but I do feel with this confidence card that it does give you a sense of satisfaction when you help other people. So I feel like there is something that you're getting out of this, but it doesn't outweigh how much it's taking from you and how drained you feel. So I do think that there are probably people from your past or parents, or I'm getting this type of energy where it just feels like you're taking care of people just because you feel like you have to. Or maybe there's this feeling of guilt. And it's interesting when people have guilt, because if you're one of those people who are doing something out of guilt, make sure you ask yourself if you are actually guilty or not, because the reality is guilt is not a feeling. You either are guilty or you're not. So whatever that means for you, whatever that is for you, ask yourself if you actually are guilty or not, because it's not a feeling. So I feel like somebody needed to hear that particular message, but I do get the sense that you are taking on these responsibilities of people because you feel like you have to, maybe because you're just too kind to say no. I just saw 555 as I said that. And so maybe it just could be that you are an overgiver. You could be a people pleaser. I am seeing that in this energy here. So, but with the Knight of Wands, surrender, and the underworld, it does feel like there are a lot of things that you can release. There are a lot of these burdens that you could unload. So the Knight of Wands and surrender are giving me a similar message in the sense that it's time for you to really move on from this, to surrender to perhaps your fears with the underworld. So what this is really giving me is that you do have a fear perhaps of telling people no. And so because of that fear of saying no or drawing a clear boundary, it feels like you just keep taking on more and more and more and more, because perhaps people know that you're not going to say no, or perhaps they don't recognize that you're overwhelmed or overburdened because you don't say no. So there is a power in that word no, where it also communicates to other people that it's too much. I just can't do this anymore. But if you continue to say yes, then the insensitive people around you are just going to keep giving you more things to take on. But the sensitive people around you don't even have the opportunity to understand that it's too much for you. So there is truly something there. This underworld is really asking you to be courageous and dig deep into your subconsciousness and into your fears, that what happens if I say no? What would happen if I say no? This could go back to childhood, maybe when you were a child, because we did see this Six of Cups here. And I do get a sense that you might be taking care of someone from your past, like perhaps a parent or something like that. So make it make sense for you. But it may be that when you were a child, you were told not to say no, and that you just had to go with the flow and just please everybody else. And that if you were saying no, you were perhaps being too outrageous of a child, or someone who speaks their own mind, and children are meant to be seen and not heard, this type of energy. So you'll know if that part applies to you, but I do feel like you can release this, but it would require you digging deep into your subconsciousness and facing those fears and really asking yourself, what would happen if I said no? And am I guilty of something? Do I really have to do all of this work? Maybe I could just do some of it. I don't have to do all of it. But it starts with boundaries, and it starts by saying no. And it's surrendering to perhaps your fears. It's surrendering to this idea that yes, you can say no. You absolutely can. You are a grown person with autonomy, and you can say no, especially to adults who have other options to take care of themselves, or to ask other people, or to delegate these things. It doesn't all have to fall on you, which is what we saw immediately, that it feels like everyone just gravitates right to you. So with the Eight of Swords, hunger, and the mask, it feels like you may be having trouble discerning which responsibilities are yours and which are other people's, because it feels like this Eight of Swords and this hunger are giving that same feeling, that you feel that overwhelm. You feel like you're depleted with this hunger card. You feel like people are taking, but no one's really giving back. No one's really replenishing what you've lost when you give and give and give. But I do think that this Eight of Swords energy is that fear we were talking about with the underworld, that fear that you have, that you can't speak up and say, hey, you know what? I'm hungry too. Can somebody feed me? And energetically is what I mean by that. So with the mask, it's like, you know, but you don't know. You're afraid to say. It's like you're halfway there with this mask. You know these are not your responsibilities. You may have already figured out that it's not fair. You may have already figured out that you're not guilty of anything, that this responsibility isn't yours and shouldn't be yours. But until you surrender to this idea that you can say no, it's like, you know, half of you knows you can say no, but the other half of you is scared to come out of those darkness, that shadow part of you that is telling you you are not allowed to say no. You just have to keep doing this. But I can tell that you can feel, half of you knows that you can say no, and it's just becoming too much, which is probably why you're watching this reading, because it's just become too much. You know this fear is holding you back, but you also know as long as you're holding yourself back, you're going to be left depleted and hungry. Because if no one's giving to you, it's like we said at the beginning, that eventually gravity applies. Your hunger is going to take over. Your need for help is going to take over. The overwhelm is just going to end up crushing you. And I just saw 1111 as I said that. So I do feel that it's like this is dawning on you, what responsibilities are actually yours and which ones are someone else's. So with this Nine of Swords, Faith, and the Judge, I really get the sense again, and these messages feel like they're starting to repeat a little bit, which I like because it means we're on the right track. But it feels like there are people around you who should be helping you. This Judge card is saying that there are advocates around you. There are people who could and should be helping you. So just to give this random example, if you are helping your, let's say, elderly parents with something, but they're guilting you into it instead of you unconditionally doing it. That's just an example. You may have siblings that could be helping you, but they're not. And I think that's the thing here that's really got you stressed out. So I think with this Faith card here, this is about, see how this person is holding their head in their hands and it looks like they've just completely come to the end of their rope, which is where I feel like you are. I do think that there is a need to not lose faith in the fact that there are people around you that should and could be helping. So what I mean by this is, when I said, when you set boundaries, the sensitive people in your environment will hear you. The sensitive people will say, oh, maybe we did let this person take on too much of the responsibility. And maybe there is an opportunity here for your siblings, to use this example, to really pitch in and help. So I'm hoping that this is resonating with someone, because this message is coming through pretty clearly. That there are people around you. So to not lose faith in that, and that there are people who want to keep things fair and balanced, but as long as you're continuing to just say, yes, no problem, I'll do it, they're never going to understand that you need them. So I do feel that that's a strong message coming through, that there is a lesson here, and I can see it here. We're about to get to that. But the lesson for you to learn here is all in this portion right here of you surrendering to this idea that you are not allowed to say no. Surrender to the idea that you can say no. And that's the thing. And then run with that and see what happens, because I feel like a lot of change will happen if you just say no. It's okay to say no. But I get it, because your shadow side and perhaps the inner child side is saying, no, we can't say no. Look at all this shadow part of us. This is all screaming at me. I cannot say no in this situation. Regardless of how hungry I am for support, I'm not allowed to ask for it. So I feel like the lesson here with the Three of Wands, Ghost, and Anima Mundi, there is a deep spiritual lesson that is the opportunity for you here. And I think with the Three of Wands and Ghost, the lesson is really telling you maybe just to stop, to pause, and look at this situation for how it is. The Three of Wands is a card of inaction because you're anticipating something. And Ghost is also a card of inactivity and almost a card of disappearance. So what this is really telling me is perhaps to not ghost this situation. Don't take that literally, but to pause the situation and say to perhaps, to use the example of parents and siblings, but again, make this make sense for you, because this could be a love situation where you are giving too much and you've never said no to your partner. So they take advantage of that, but maybe they don't even realize they're taking advantage of that because you've never really spoken up and said, no, I can't do this anymore. But the idea of just pausing and just don't do anything, don't help, or tell your siblings or tell your partner or tell your parents, I'm just going to take a break. I'm going to take a 2-week break. So here's what you can do for yourself for the next 2 weeks. And I think that that's going to help you really solve things. And it's going to really create some kind of a wake-up call for the people around you. So I think it leaves the people who may already be taking advantage of you 2 weeks or whatever, just to use that example, to really think about how much you're actually giving them and a chance to miss you. And if there are other people around you, to use the example of siblings who could be helping, then this is really strongly coming through, as it gives them the opportunity to say, oh, wait a second, maybe I'm not doing enough and maybe I should be helping more. I didn't realize how overwhelming this has become. So there you go. That is your reading for if you're feeling overwhelmed and burdened with responsibility. There are responsibilities that are not yours, and learning to say no to, and understanding which responsibilities are yours and which ones are not yours. And then saying no once you decide what those things are, that you can really cut out probably at least half of what you've been doing. Delegate it to the people around you, because I can see that there are people around you. And with the Faith card, I can see that those people want to help you, but perhaps it's just not been said out loud. But that's the real lesson here, is you saying, I'm not going to do this right now. I'm taking a break so somebody else can jump in, and just learning to set those boundaries, even one little step at a time, learning to set the boundaries, and then eventually being able to use your voice and say no. So please let me know how this reading was resonant for you. Consider subscribing to the channel if you like my vibe, and we will do this again sometime. Thanks, everybody. Bye.